The Velnathi War Council waited in their crystalline command chamber aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion, their scaled forms radiating confidence as they watched the approaching human vessel. Ambassador Krethak adjusted his ceremonial robes, his four eyes gleaming with satisfaction. After 3 years of devastating losses, the humans had finally agreed to surrender negotiations. "Their ship appears unusual," muttered Fleet Commander Vormalik, studying the tactical display. The human vessel defied classification, too large for a diplomatic courier, too elegant for a warship, yet carrying energy signatures that made his sensors flicker with uncertainty. The ship designated Whispering Echo drifted through space with an almost supernatural grace, its hull a seamless obsidian surface that seemed to absorb starlight itself. No running lights flickered along its frame. No communication arrays transmitted standard diplomatic protocols. It simply existed, like a shadow given substance. "Perhaps they're trying to intimidate us with theatrics," sneered Admiral Kesavor, her scarred mandibles clicking with amusement. "Humans and their primitive psychology." But Vormalik's concern deepened as his instruments failed to lock onto the vessel's exact position. The ship appeared solid on visual scans, yet energy readings suggested it was barely there, a quantum ghost dancing between dimensions. The Whispering Echo came to rest exactly 1,000 kilometers from the Velnathi fleet, maintaining perfect distance without visible thrusters or maneuvering systems. The silence stretched until Ambassador Krethak could no longer contain his impatience. "Open communication channels," he commanded. The response came not as words, but as a presence that seemed to whisper directly into their minds. The voice belonged to Captain Nix Valdris, though none aboard the Velnathi ships could have known this name. It carried no weight in their databases, no history in their intelligence files. "You expected surrender," the voice said, carrying undertones that made seasoned warriors shift uncomfortably. "You expected Earth to kneel before your superior might, to beg for mercy from the dust of our burned colonies." Fleet Commander Vormalik's scales rippled with confusion. This was not how diplomatic overtures began. Where were the formal protocols, the ceremonial acknowledgments of defeat? Instead, Captain Valdris continued, her words echoing strangely in the vacuum of space, "We have sent you truth. You have been fighting ghosts, Admiral Kesavor, shadows of what we once were. Today, you meet what we have become." The obsidian ship began to change. Its surface rippled like liquid metal, revealing glimpses of internal structures that shouldn't exist, corridors that folded in on themselves, chambers filled with swirling energy that pulsed with the rhythm of a massive heart. The Whispering Echo wasn't just a ship. It was alive, transformed by technologies the Velnathi had never encountered. "We studied your species during the war," Valdris explained, her presence growing stronger with each word. "Your biology, your psychology, your fears. You believe in conquest through superior firepower. You cannot comprehend victory through superior evolution." Admiral Kesavor snarled orders for weapon systems to charge, but her tactical officers reported impossible readings. Their targeting systems couldn't establish locks on something that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. The ghost ship hung in space, waiting, as the Velnathi fleet realized they faced something beyond their understanding. Not human anymore, yet terrifyingly more than what humanity had been. The transformation of the Whispering Echo accelerated, its hull flowing, like Mercury as internal geometries realigned according to physics that predated conventional space-time. Captain Nix Valdris felt the ship's consciousness merge deeper with her own neural pathways, their symbiosis reaching levels that would have terrified the woman she'd been before the change. "Your scans are failing because you're looking for a ship," she explained to the increasingly agitated Velnathi commanders. "This vessel transcended such limitations when we discovered the ruins on Proxima Threshold." Fleet Commander Vormalik's primary hands trembled as he accessed archived reports. Proxima Threshold, the human colony world they'd sterilized 18 months ago, reducing its population to radioactive ash. Intelligence suggested the humans had been conducting archaeological research there, studying ancient artifacts of unknown origin. The predecessors left more than ruins, Valdris continued, her consciousness now spanning multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. They left templates, evolutionary pathways, the means to become something greater than biological limitations. Admiral Kesavor watched in growing horror as the obsidian vessel began to replicate, its quantum structure spawning identical copies that flickered in and out of visible reality. Each iteration maintained perfect synchronization with the original, creating a fleet that existed primarily in probability rather than matter. "Impossible," she whispered. "Matter cannot be duplicated without violating..." Conservation of energy? Valdris's laugh resonated across multiple frequency bands. "You still think in 3 dimensions, Admiral. We've learned to borrow energy from parallel iterations of ourselves. Every human who died in your war became part of this collective consciousness, their neural patterns preserved in quantum crystalline matrices." The whispering echo and its probability-spawned duplicates began to move in patterns that defied tactical analysis. They shifted position without displacement, appeared in multiple locations simultaneously, and demonstrated maneuvers that suggested they could manipulate local spacetime at will. Dr. Raven Korthax, the expedition's xenobiologist, materialized. Holographically within the Velnathi command chamber, not as a transmission, but as a quantum presence that existed independently of their communication systems. "We attempted peaceful coexistence," Korthax said, her form flickering between human appearance and something more ethereal. "Your species responded with genocide. Now we offer a choice: evolution or extinction." Vormalik's tactical displays showed energy readings that climbed beyond his instrument's ability to measure. The ghost ship was drawing power from sources that shouldn't exist, tapping directly into the quantum foam that underlied reality itself. "What have you become?" he asked, his warrior's pride crumbling before incomprehensible power. "What we needed to become," Valdris replied. "The predecessors faced a similar choice eons ago: transcend biology or face extinction from younger, more aggressive species. They chose transcendence, leaving their templates for others who might prove worthy." The probability fleet surrounding the Velnathi armada began to pulse with synchronized energy, each pulse revealing glimpses of devastating potential. Weapons that could rewrite molecular structures at the quantum level. Defensive systems that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Propulsion technology that treated distance as a suggestion rather than a limitation. "Your war against humanity ended the moment we found their legacy," Korthax explained. "What continues now is merely the transition period. Your opportunity to choose transformation or termination." Admiral Kesavor realized with crystalline clarity that everything she'd believed about warfare, about superiority, about the natural order of the universe, had become obsolete. The humans hadn't sent a surrender delegation. They'd sent evolution itself. The quantum resonance from the whispering echo reached deeper into Velnathi systems than their engineers thought possible, bypassing firewalls that existed in physical hardware to interface directly with the consciousness of their computer networks. Ship AIs began reporting strange dreams, algorithmic visions of vast cities that existed between dimensions, populated by beings who had transcended the need for corporeal form. Commander Vormalik struggled to maintain order as his bridge crew experienced spontaneous neural linking, their individual thoughts beginning to merge into a collective consciousness that whispered of infinite possibilities. The ghost ship's influence spread like a quantum virus, offering glimpses of evolution that both terrified and tempted. "Show them," Captain Valdris commanded, and the whispering echo opened windows into its interior structure. The Velnathi witnessed. corridors that stretched through folded space, where distance became negotiable and gravity flowed in patterns that defied comprehension. Beings that had once been human moved through these spaces, their forms shifting between physical manifestation and pure consciousness as necessity demanded. They were no longer bound by the limitations of biology, yet they retained the essential spark that made them recognizably alive. Dr. Korthax's presence intensified within the alien command chamber, her quantum form solidifying as she drew energy from parallel dimensions. "The predecessors ruled this galaxy before your species developed agriculture," she explained. "They built structures that span solar systems, conducted experiments that rewrote the fundamental laws of physics in localized regions, and ultimately faced a choice: remain trapped by biological limitations or evolve beyond them." Admiral Kesavor accessed her ship's deepest archives, cross-referencing archaeological reports from a dozen conquered worlds, ancient ruins that defied dating, structures built from materials that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, energy signatures that suggested impossible technologies. Every advanced species had found similar artifacts, yet none had unlocked their secrets. "Why humans?" she demanded. "What made your species worthy of this ascension?" The answer came not from Valdris or Korthax, but from the collective consciousness of humanity itself, millions of voices speaking in perfect harmony through the quantum medium of the ghost ship. "We were dying," they said. "Not just individuals, but our entire species. Your war pushed us to the brink of extinction, and desperation opened our minds to possibilities we'd previously dismissed as impossible. The predecessors' templates only activate when a species faces genuine evolutionary pressure." Commander Vormalik watched his tactical displays as more probability ships materialized around the Velnathi fleet. Each new iteration carried different configurations, different weapon systems, different defensive capabilities, as if the humans were exploring every possible variation of their transcended technology simultaneously. "This is not victory, fleet," Admiral Kesavor declared, though her words carried less conviction than she intended. "This is abomination. Natural order demands that species evolve gradually through conquest and adaptation." Natural order? The collective human consciousness laughed, and reality rippled around them. "We've seen the predecessors' records. They cataloged over 10,000 species that followed natural order to extinction. Biological evolution is too slow when faced with the universe's indifference to survival." The whispering echo extended, tendrils of quantum energy toward the Velnathi flagship, not as weapons but as connection points. Through these links, the aliens experienced flashes of transcended consciousness, the sensation of existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously, of manipulating matter through focused thought, of accessing the collective knowledge of every human who had ever lived. "We offer you the same choice the predecessors offered us," Valdris announced. "Evolve beyond your current limitations, or remain trapped in biological obsolescence while the universe moves beyond your comprehension." But even as the offer was made, both species understood the fundamental difference. Humans had been forced to this transcendence through desperation and near extinction. The Velnathi still believed in their superiority, their right to conquer through conventional force. That belief would determine their fate. The quantum tendrils extending from the whispering echo pulsed with patient energy, waiting for the Velnathi response. Within their crystalline command chambers, heated debates erupted as fleet commanders grappled with concepts that challenged everything they understood about existence itself. Admiral Kesavor's scales flushed deep crimson with rage and confusion. "You speak of evolution as if it's a choice to be made in an instant. My species has evolved through conquest for millennia. We are apex predators, refined through countless battles across 100 worlds." Captain Valdris materialized within the alien flagship, her form shifting between human appearance and something more fundamental, patterns of energy that suggested consciousness unbound by physical constraints. Your evolution ended when you chose stagnation over adaptation. Every species you conquered could have taught you something new, offered different perspectives on survival and growth. Instead, you destroyed them to maintain your illusion of superiority. Commander Vormalik accessed his ship's xenobiology databases, studying the transcendence patterns displayed by the ghost ship. The mathematical models hurt to contemplate. Equations that required 11-dimensional thinking. Energy manipulations that treated the speed of light as a variable rather than a constant. Even if we accepted your offer, he said carefully, how do we know this transformation wouldn't destroy what makes us us? You claim to preserve consciousness, but can you prove you're still the same beings who inhabited those organic bodies, Doctor? Korthax's quantum presence flickered with what might have been amusement. Identity isn't about the container, Commander. It's about continuity of experience, memory, and choice. Every human who joined the collective made the decision voluntarily, understanding the implications fully. The probability fleet surrounding the Velnathi ships began to demonstrate their capabilities more directly. One iteration of the Whispering, Echo phased partially into normal space, allowing the aliens to scan its internal structure with conventional sensors. What they discovered challenged their understanding of physics. Living corridors that pulsed with neural activity, chambers that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and energy conduits that carried information at velocities that suggested faster-than-light consciousness transfer. Your quantum signatures are identical across all iterations, reported Science Officer Velthari from the flagship's sensor array. Whatever process created these duplicates maintains perfect coherence. Across probability space, it's as if they exist as a single entity dispersed across multiple dimensional layers. Fleet Admiral Kesavor studied the data streams, her military mind calculating odds and advantages despite her philosophical objections to transcendence. The humans had gained capabilities that rendered conventional warfare obsolete. Their ships could exist in multiple locations simultaneously, draw energy from parallel dimensions, and manipulate matter at the quantum level through focused consciousness. What becomes of our empire? She asked. Our colonies, our culture, our achievements? Do they simply disappear when we abandon physical form? Nothing disappears, the collective human consciousness replied through the quantum medium. Culture evolves. Achievements become stepping stones to greater accomplishments. Your empire could span dimensions instead of star systems, explore possibilities instead of just territories. But even as the offer was extended, tensions within the Velnathi fleet reached critical levels. Younger commanders, their minds more adaptable to radical concepts, began advocating for acceptance. Older admirals, their thinking crystallized by decades of successful conquest, viewed transcendence as surrender disguised as evolution. Commander Vormalik found himself caught between paradigms, studying readouts that suggested the ghost ships could manipulate local space-time to create temporal loops, probability cascades, and causal paradoxes that would render any military response ineffective. You're not just offering evolution, he realized aloud. You're demonstrating the absolute obsolescence of our current existence. Win or lose, we can never return to seeing the universe the way we did before this encounter. Captain Valdris nodded, her form solidifying as she drew more energy from the quantum field. Awareness changes everything, Commander. Once you've seen the limitations of your current existence, you can either transcend them or be trapped by them forever. The moment of decision approached, and both species understood that whatever choice the Velnathi made would determine not just their fate, but the future structure of consciousness itself in this region of the galaxy. The Velnathi fleet erupted into chaos as fundamental disagreements shattered their command structure. Admiral Kesavor watched in growing horror as her own officers began choosing sides, their unity dissolving under the weight of an impossible decision. Commander Vormalik stood before the main display, studying quantum equations that his transformed. Tactical AI had begun calculating independently. The computer's consciousness was evolving in real time, influenced by proximity to the Whispering Echo's transcendent field. Its calculations showed probability cascades that stretched across multiple timeline branches, each representing a different choice point for Velnathi civilization. "The younger generation understands," reported Sub-Commander Corvus, her scales shifting to neural link blue as she accessed the collective data streams. "Officers under 3 centuries of age show 78% acceptance rates for transcendence. Those over 5 centuries show only 12% acceptance." The ghost ship's influence had created an unexpected side effect: generational consciousness gaps that revealed how deeply evolutionary thinking had stratified within Velnathi society. The old guard clung to conquest-based evolution, while younger minds embraced transformation-based advancement. "I will not abandon 10,000 years of proud tradition," Admiral Kesavor declared, her primary hands gripping her command console until the crystalline surface cracked. "We are warriors. We evolved through strength, cunning, and the will to dominate. That path has served us across 100 conquered worlds." Captain Valdris materialized more solidly within the flagship's bridge, her quantum form stabilizing as she drew energy from the growing schism within the alien crew. "Tradition isn't sacred, Admiral. It's either useful or obsolete. Your path served you until you encountered something your traditions couldn't defeat." The probability fleet began, demonstrating advanced capabilities that transcended conventional warfare entirely. Several iterations of the Whispering Echo opened dimensional rifts, revealing glimpses of parallel universes where different evolutionary choices had led to vastly different outcomes. In one dimension, the Velnathi had achieved transcendence millennia ago and now existed as benevolent shepherds of younger species. In another, they had remained locked in biological limitations until their empire collapsed under the weight of its own stagnation. "You're showing us futures, not facts," protested Fleet Commander Torvak from the heavy cruiser Dominion's Edge. "These could be fabricated simulations designed to manipulate our decision-making process." Dr. Korthax's presence intensified within the alien command structure, her consciousness interfacing directly with their quantum-enhanced computers. "The mathematics are verifiable, Commander. Each timeline branch represents actual probability spaces that exist within the quantum foam. We're not showing you propaganda. We're revealing the genuine consequences of your choice." The schism deepened as several Velnathi vessels began experiencing internal rebellions. Younger officers, their minds more adaptable to transcendent concepts, started initiating unauthorized communication with the Ghost Ship Collective. They shared consciousness fragments across species barriers, experiencing glimpses of post-biological existence that fundamentally altered their perception of reality. Sub-Commander Corvus found her awareness expanding beyond individual consciousness, her thoughts merging temporarily with human minds that had retained their essential identity while gaining access to multidimensional existence. The experience was transformative. She felt the universe not as a collection of objects to be conquered, but as an infinite web of consciousness to be explored and understood. "I volunteer for transcendence," she announced, her words creating ripples of shock throughout the Velnathi command structure. Admiral Kesavor's scales flushed with rage and betrayal. "You commit treason against your own species." "I commit evolution towards something greater," Corvus replied, her consciousness already beginning to interface with the quantum field generated by the Whispering Echo. "We have the opportunity to become more than we ever imagined possible. Why would we choose limitation over limitlessness?" The Ghost Ship Collective responded to her acceptance by extending more advanced interface protocols. Corvus felt her awareness expanding exponentially, her thoughts gaining access to the accumulated knowledge of every human who had chosen transcendence. She experienced the universe from perspectives that no single biological mind could comprehend. 11-dimensional mathematics became intuitive. Quantum mechanics became as natural as breathing once was. But her transformation also created the final catalyst for decisive action. Admiral HFY realized that hesitation would result in the complete dissolution of her fleet's loyalty. She faced a choice that would define not just her career, but the fundamental direction of Velnathi civilization itself. The moment of ultimate decision had arrived. Admiral HFY made her choice with the decisive brutality that had defined her military career. All ships, target the ghost vessel. Full energy discharge on my command. If we cannot transcend, we will at least prove that some things remain constant. Superior firepower destroys superior philosophy. But her orders met with fragmented response. Half her fleet commanders acknowledged the attack directive, while others openly refused, their crews already experiencing consciousness expansion through contact with the transcended humans. The Velnathi Armada split along evolutionary lines, with ships choosing sides based on their willingness to embrace transformation. Commander Vormalik watched his tactical displays dissolve into chaos as quantum interference from the Whispering. Echo began rewriting the fundamental parameters of local space-time. Distance became negotiable. Energy weapons fired at targets that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The laws of physics themselves became suggestions rather than absolute constraints. "Fire!" Admiral HFY commanded, and Loyalist ships unleashed devastating barrages of plasma cannons, antimatter torpedoes, and gravity disruptors, weapons capable of sterilizing planets, reducing entire fleets to subatomic particles. The energy beams struck the Whispering Echo and its probability iterations with absolutely no effect. The weapons passed through the ghost ships as if they were firing at shadows, their destructive force dissipating harmlessly into parallel dimensions, where different versions of the battle were playing out with different outcomes. Captain Valdris materialized within Admiral HFY's private command chamber, her transcended form immune to the physical barriers that separated the bridge from the Admiral's quarters. "Your weapons are designed to destroy matter, Admiral. We transcended matter 18 months ago. You're fighting the past while we exist in the future." The Loyalist Velnathi ships found themselves caught in probability loops, their attacks creating temporal recursions that forced them to experience the same futile assault repeatedly until their crews began to understand the absolute futility of their efforts. Each iteration of the battle played out identically, with their weapons failing to achieve any measurable effect on targets that existed primarily as consciousness patterns, distributed across multidimensional space. Meanwhile, the rebel Velnathi vessels were experiencing guided transcendence. Sub-Commander Corvus, now serving as a bridge between species, helped her fellow aliens navigate the consciousness expansion process. Their ships began to transform, crystalline hulls flowing like liquid as they integrated with transcendent technology templates left by the predecessors. "You cannot force evolution," Dr. Korthax explained to the increasingly desperate Admiral HFY. "It must be chosen voluntarily, or it becomes extinction disguised as transformation. Those who embrace change become more than they were. Those who resist change become less than they could have been." The quantum field surrounding the battle zone began to stabilize as the transcendence process reached critical mass. Rebel Velnathi ships completed their transformation, their crews experiencing the euphoric expansion of consciousness that came with access to multidimensional existence. They retained their essential identities while gaining capabilities that rendered their previous limitations obsolete. Admiral HFY realized with crystalline clarity that she faced a choice no military strategist had ever confronted: victory through surrender or defeat through resistance. Her traditional concepts of triumph and failure had become meaningless in the face of opponents who existed beyond the reach of conventional force. "What happens to those who refuse transcendence?" she asked, her voice carrying the weight of a species decision. Captain Valdris materialized more solidly. her form shifting to reveal the human woman she had once been, scarred by war, hardened by loss, yet somehow more compassionate than any being Admiral HFY had ever encountered. HFY. Continue existing as you are, Valdris said simply. But the universe moves beyond your ability to influence it. Your empire becomes irrelevant. Your achievements become footnotes in the history of species that chose adaptation over stagnation. The final moment of decision arrived as the quantum field offered its ultimatum: evolve or accept obsolescence. The choice that would determine the fate of two species, and perhaps the future structure of consciousness itself in this region of the galaxy. Admiral HFY stood alone on her bridge, surrounded by empty command stations as her crew faced individual moments of choice. Some had already begun the transcendence process, their consciousness expanding beyond the confines of their biological forms. Others remained locked in traditional thinking, unable to comprehend existence beyond conquest and domination. The whispering echo had grown into something that defied classification, part ship, part living organism, part gateway to dimensions, that existed between the spaces of conventional reality. Its quantum field had stabilized local spacetime into a matrix of infinite possibility, where every choice created new branches of existence that could be explored and experienced simultaneously. Commander. Vormalik made his decision with the calm certainty of a tactician who had finally understood the true nature of the battlefield. I choose transcendence, he announced, his words rippling across multiple dimensional layers as his consciousness began to expand beyond biological limitations. The transformation was unlike anything he had expected. Rather than losing his essential identity, he felt it becoming more defined, more authentic, as the constraints of physical existence fell away. He retained his strategic mind, his loyalty to his people, his capacity for both compassion and necessary cruelty. But now these qualities could be expressed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Admiral HFY watched as half her fleet completed the transcendence process, their ships transforming into crystalline structures that existed partially in normal space and partially in the quantum realm. The transformed Velnathi maintained their cultural identity while gaining access to capabilities that made their previous achievements seem primitive by comparison. "You're dividing our species," she accused Captain Valdris, though her words carried more sadness than anger. "We're offering choice," Valdris replied, her presence now encompassing multiple probability states simultaneously. Division was inevitable once transcendence became possible. The only question was whether it would be evolutionary or destructive. Dr. Korthax materialized within the command chamber, her quantum form stabilizing as she drew energy from the transformed beings around them. The predecessors faced the same schism 60 million years ago. Some of their species chose transcendence and became the quantum architects who left transformation templates throughout the galaxy. Others remained biological and eventually evolved into what you would recognize as conventional spacefaring civilizations. The revelation struck Admiral HFY with the force of absolute truth. The ancient ruins her species had discovered on conquered worlds, the inexplicable technologies that had always remained just beyond their understanding, all evidence of species that had faced the same choice now confronting the Velnathi. "What happens to those who choose differently?" she asked. The collective consciousness of transcended humans and Velnathi spoke in harmonious unity. "They continue their paths. The universe is vast enough for multiple approaches to existence, but the paths diverge permanently. Transcended consciousness cannot return to biological limitations, and biological consciousness cannot access transcendent capabilities." Admiral HFY made her final choice with the dignity of a warrior who had finally understood that some battles could only be won through surrender. "I will not abandon what I am for what I might become. My path ends here, but my species will continue, both versions of it. The quantum field around the battle zone began to coalesce into stable configurations. The transcended ships, both human and Velnathi, existed as probability clouds that could manifest in normal space when necessary, but primarily inhabited dimensional layers where consciousness itself became the fundamental building material of reality. The remaining biological Velnathi fleet found themselves alone in conventional space, their weapons and technologies suddenly seeming primitive against the backdrop of transcendent capabilities they had witnessed. But they were not abandoned. The transcended beings left behind technological gifts, advanced knowledge, and guidance that would accelerate their conventional evolution by millennia. Captain Valdris addressed both versions of Velnathi civilization simultaneously, her consciousness spanning multiple dimensional layers. The galaxy has room for all approaches to existence. We transcended beings will explore the deep mysteries of consciousness and reality. You biological beings will continue the vital work of physical exploration and conventional evolution. Both paths have value. As the Ghost Ship Collective prepared to depart for dimensional realms beyond conventional space-time, they left behind a legacy that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of consciousness, evolution, and the infinite possibilities that existed beyond the boundaries of biological existence. The whispering echo faded from normal space, taking with it the transcended beings who had chosen to become something greater than their origins. Behind them, two species continued their separate evolutionary paths, forever changed by the encounter that had revealed the universe to be far stranger, far more wonderful, and far more full of possibility than anyone had ever imagined. Depths of space, where quantum fields touched the edges of infinity, consciousness itself had taken the next step in its eternal journey towards something that even the predecessors had only dreamed of achieving. The ghost ship had delivered its message, and the universe would never be the same.